Hello, hello, and welcome to Follow Up Boss Office Hours, the final session of 2024. Really excited to dig in today. My name is Lee Adkins. I'll be your host along with Paige Orlando. What's up, Paige?
Hey Lee, it's good to see you as always.
Good to see you. I always love doing these sessions with you. Always dig in deep and hopefully bring some great knowledge. We'll let you guys be the judge of that. But Paige, why don't you give a little bit of intel on kind of your background, what you do at Follow Up Boss? Our topic today is how to audit your Follow Up Boss account. Should be relevant for everyone on the planet, from a solo agent to a 2,000 person team or brokerage. But Paige, yeah, give us a little background on you, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are new to FUB or haven't been on one of these office hours before, my name is Paige. I'm a senior success manager at Follow Up Boss. I've been here about 3 years, and prior to that, I was a director of operations for a local team of about 30 or so, somewhere around there. I can't quite remember the head count at that time. So I've gotten that client experience with Follow Up Boss because that was my baby. I ran that account and loved it so much that when you get the opportunity to work with hundreds of teams as opposed to just one, it's kind of a no-brainer when it comes to career development. But it's really been fun to see the flip side of coming from a client and knowing the success we can have in here, and then learning from all of my current clients now on all of the creative things that everybody comes up with and they're able to do and solve for, and all of those unique pieces. So, but like you said, this is a very relevant topic from a solo agent to managing a big team. And if you're not doing this on a regular basis, this is your call to action to do this at least once a year. We're launching into 2025. Now is the time to do that and to really evaluate. But I mean, probably even once a quarter at minimum, to dive into your account, audit the things that really matter, and make sure that you are launching in the right direction to meet those goals. If you're halfway through the year and you're not meeting your goals and you figure out, oh, it's because my leads aren't going to the right spot, that's a problem we need to solve for. So yes, we want to set it up and we want to move forward and have that foundation, but we constantly need to be evaluating our foundation. And is it still in alignment with what we're trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of add to that a bit, for one, Follow Up Boss is a living, breathing thing. There's new features, there's new things that come along, and sometimes you're not ready to implement them, or they're in beta and you want to wait till they're out of beta before you dive in too deep. And your model is changing, the market is changing, you're adding agents. It really is a constant thing. Yeah, Paige, I would say the same. At minimum once a year, quarterly is great. And one last thing I'll say that I always forget to say, I'm in a similar scenario to you, Paige. It was a long, long time ago, but I ran a team on Follow Up Boss. It's also how I got into it and really learned it. And I think I don't say that enough. I think people a lot of times are like, oh, well, you do Follow Up Boss stuff, but I have personally run a team also on Follow Up Boss. It was Follow Up Boss 1 many, many moons ago. Uh,
Classic.
Definitely a different product, but to that same point, the evolution, the new features, there are things you're going to want to, know about or pay attention to. And we'll try to keep it pretty high level today, but we're also going to screen share and go through all the things. So Paige, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, let's dive right in.
Jump in. And per usual, this is a demo account. So there aren't real leads in here, and it's not real information. And there's very little information in here for that reason. Yours will obviously be already much more robust in those particular things. So just kind of that disclosure, this is the demo account we always use, but it's just really great to see inside a Follow Up Boss account what we should be looking at and where do we even start. And like you mentioned earlier, we were chatting before this call began, Lee said, basically, we're going to start here on this admin section and we are going to work through this piece. And so, of course, we're not going to keep you all day and go through each one of these, but we do want to hit those high level, most important pieces to make sure that your foundation is there. When I say foundation, to me, and Lee, you may have some other additives on this, but are my leads coming in? Are they being assigned to the proper people in the proper way? And then do I know what I'm doing with them once they get here? And then do my team, if you're running a team, does my team know how to do that? That is the high level big piece that we want to look at here. But again, there's so many amazing things that we want to highlight and we want to evaluate that we'll briefly touch on. But foundation audit 100% needs to be done.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that other than this is a bit of an iterative process in the sense that in maybe auditing, you're finding things you want to change. And then those are things you probably need to train the team on or come up with some SOPs or some other, a way to roll that out. And then you can measure it again, which is why, I would recommend doing quarterly, if not monthly. And I love moving left to right in the admin tab. I think it's super simple, but the only caveat to that, I like to start on Teams because I want to look at Teams is essentially going to give you if you're using Teams, the very top team is going to be all your users. If you're not using Teams, you'll just see this. This screen gives you a lot of intel. I'll let you take it from here, Paige, but like this screen gives you a lot of intel around what are your users doing? Is stuff connected and set up right? Is call recording on? Can they export? So I'll let you run from here with this page, but I like to start here and then go left to right in the admin tab.
Yeah, for sure. This is a really great call out. And so just to circle back with that, if you are on a platform account, you may have some sub teams where you're really segmenting out if you've got some collaborative little subgroups with yourself. But if you're a grow account or a pro account or a solo user, it takes you straight to this screen here. But for yourself and for the agents, if you're running a team, we need to make sure that our settings are configured. And so two of the most important things that we say in Follow Up Boss, and we'll dive deeper onto those, are we need to log our communication and we need to identify who our people are. And so the first piece of our configuration settings is to make sure that our configuration for communication is done. If we don't have that set up properly, it's not going to function properly. So emails not connected needs to be addressed. This syncs emails back and forth from FUB to your inbox. And so it's only the emails that are tied to your contacts. So personal emails aren't coming in here. We're not, monitoring those particular things. It's only the contacts that are in here. If this is not connected, your sync may not be working properly. And additionally, if you're bringing in leads that hit your email, like from other integrative partners, those can't come in either. And so we need to address that. And that will happen in your profile settings here. I'm not going to necessarily go in through all of those particular pieces, but this is where those settings get configured. And so we see here, we've got several team members that need to reconnect their email addresses because it's not going to be functioning properly. Additionally, when was the last time they logged in? Let's take a look at when we're logging in, how we're logging in, and that can start a conversation of frequency or, okay, Caroline hasn't logged in a couple of years. Shame on you, Caroline. But is it because we don't know what we're doing? Do we need to provide education? Do we have hesitation? Are you good? What's going on here? And so that is your first piece of who's logging in and then diving back into, again, auditing what we're doing in this account. This is a large investment with your leads and with your business. And if we're not logging in and if we're not configured properly, then, we're dead in the water already. So we want to look at this first.
Well, and especially, I think as far as the last scene, are you sending leads to this person? Like if you're round robining leads to someone and they haven't logged in, now if you're first to claim, that's obviously a bit different, or a pond. But if you're routing round robin leads to someone, they haven't logged in 4 days or 2 months or longer, you're going to want to know that. And you're going to want to know it not at the end of the year. Like that needs to be more of a leading thing than a lagging thing. Like you don't want to go, oh, shoot. Um, and I'm less worried about mobile. It depends. Like some people are more on mobile, some people are on desktop. So if someone's never on mobile, but 2 hours ago on desktop, fine, we're not going to micromanage that. The other piece, and I'm glad we have this example, like the lender here, you can see it says invite sent, resend. That means they haven't even set up their account. So that's pretty important because for a number of reasons, obviously, but same thing. If you're routing lender leads to that lender and they haven't accepted the invite, that would be something that you would want to know as a business owner. Most likely as well, again, can somebody export? Are their leads paused? What's their role? Is somebody accidentally an admin or something where they can see or do things they're not supposed to do? So I think just checking this first is a really smart play.
Yeah, great call out there to start. Yes, we want to do left to right, but we need to make sure our settings are configured first. And so that's one of the biggest pieces. Now, once we have those and we make sure that everybody's configured properly, That's when we start with this left to right. So is there anything else you want to add, or do you want to jump into lead flow?
Lead flow is great.
Awesome. So this is a page that's in admin permissions only. So it's not like, your agents can come in here and manipulate these particular things if you have a team. It's, admin and owners can be the only ones that make these distributions. So new leads are coming in. Where are they going? Do we want them to go in a round robin fashion? And so right next to it, I kind of like to marry these two, because this is how leads are coming in, but this is how they're going out to the agent. So when it says groups, we're talking like distribution groups. Be thinking like locations, price points. What specialty does this particular agent, are we giving them the right type of leads at the right time? You may want to have a group of individuals that work the higher luxury properties that are more experienced than those that are just getting into the industry. And maybe we're going to work first-time home buyers to get a few reps under our belt before we do that. And so looking at these pieces, we would create our groups here. Our options are first to claim. Some people like to call it jump ball, Shark Tank, whatever name you like. We call it first to claim in here. Or round robin, meaning that we are just going to stack individually, one right after the other. It's Lee's turn to get a lead, then it's mine, then it's Joe's, then it's Paul's, whatever the case may be. Or they can alert all of your team at once, and who is first available and who is the quickest. For that urgency of speed to lead, we have first to claim. And so we want to be thinking about, what has our team done? Maybe we were a smaller group and it made sense to be round robin earlier this year, but maybe we're larger and we're missing leads because that round robin, the lender never logged in. They're getting all those leads that are sitting there and they're not working them. So maybe we now need to shift over to a first to claim mentality to get better on that speed to lead. What is working for us? What's not? You're not married to these decisions right now, but when you check it again on that next quarter to audit, this is where we make those decisions and the things to be thinking about. So then we come over here and make sure that those proper groups are being distributed by lead source and by all of those focuses. Anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, I don't want to go too deep into the groups. I do want to mention we did a session a long time ago. I may try to find a link to it and drop it in the chat, but about kind of pros and cons of round robin versus first to claim. I don't want to go too crazy deep on it, but something I recommended and did in my role in the webinars with Barry Jenkins, and we both had a similar experience, and that sometimes just changing it changes things. I had an experience running a team where we had some assumptions around who should get certain leads, but I moved things back to round robin, and there was one or two people, one in particular, who really rose to the top because now the opportunities were distributed evenly. And so on top of that, so number one, first off, you get people's attention when you change things. Hey, now you have to claim these. But we had a similar experience in our team where we had a less busy team member who was available to claim, but they weren't as strong an agent to close the sale. So comes down to your business model and all those things, but you've got options. But again, it makes sense to audit it occasionally, to think through, is this the best way for what we're doing now? And how is that working? If we could hit, I don't want to get too lost in this because I know I could. Could you hit advanced settings real quick just so we can show the idea that what you were talking about before, like if they're tagged this or if they're this price point, they can go to one group. If they are a certain area, they can go to a certain group. We have plenty of prior office hours. I'll drop a link to the playlist in the chat on how to do some of these things. But there's really a nearly unlimited number of things that you can do as far as routing by price, area, all those things. And again, just is your strat, and the fact that each of these can be different groups, meaning some of them can be first to claim and some of them can be round robin. So you do you, but that's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it depends on your lead source too. Like you said, some lead sources may be a better suit for a round robin and some may be better for first to claim, just depending on how they're coming in and how you're receiving them. And like I said, when we click here in these advanced settings, you're able to see all of the different ways that we can filter out those leads, tags that come over, price point, locations. If you're working multiple areas or if your area is really large, maybe some people work the north side of the city and some people work the south. And so getting really granular with those, additionally, phone numbers and things like that, those are here and available, but tend to be very specific. And so when we're talking through those, that's something to chat through with us as CSMs or the support team, but they're possibilities. And each one of these, you can create additional rules. So you can have as many rules as you need, but like if we come in and they're tagged this, I need it to go to this first to claim group. If they're not tagged that, it's going to jump over rule 1 and come to rule 2 and look at, okay, well, if it's priced at this, it goes to this group. And it will just continue to trickle down. As soon as the lead hits follow up boss, it's going to go down each one of your rules. And then by default, if for some reason you get a wild lead that doesn't meet any of that criteria, where does it go? And so we want to set these up and make sure that they are saved properly for each one of your lead sources. And one thing to call out, this feels like kind of a heavy lift. And like you said, I don't want to get too granular into this because it is a rabbit hole for sure. But we do save you some time that once you build this out, if this is applicable to multiple lead sources, you can copy from your additional ones. So you can grab in and get those additional roles and kind of speed things along. So don't feel like that you're going to be in this account redoing all of your roles over and over and over. We've got some ways to streamline that and make it more efficient. Additionally, just to kind of speak to, and again, I don't want to go down a full rabbit hole, but we are working in that left to right. We want to look at action plans of what's going out when your new leads hit. Now, some lead sources may not need an action plan. If you're getting direct phone calls from a lead source and you've already talked to them, it may not be appropriate to send out an email that says, "Hey, it's nice to meet you," because
When can you talk?
they just
We
did.
just hung up, dummy.
Exactly. Doesn't really put off the easiest process of like that you know what you're doing. So we want to make sure that that is in alignment as well. But additionally, you want to evaluate your content on a regular basis. We have great content that's a good place to start in our action plans, but I always say it needs to be customized to you as a business and it needs to be customized to your style and the way that you would speak to things. It should sound like you. And so we want to make sure, again, here at the lead flow piece, that we have the appropriate plans attached to each one of those lead sources. You'll see here, we have a different plan on this one as opposed to this one, because we want to approach that type of lead in a unique way.
Absolutely.
Which then gets us to evaluating our content. When we're looking at our action plans, we've got some great content but maybe things get outdated. We've seen so many changes in this industry and in our lead sources and the way things are working. It has to be reevaluated in order to stay relevant. It also has to be, not to go down another rabbit hole, but when we're talking about things that are going to go out that may hit junk or spam or stay out of compliance for, those initial text messages, making sure we're evaluating that content, looking at these pieces to see, okay, we've run this one so many times, but we didn't get a lot of engagement in it.
Right.
That means we need to change something. If you're running an action plan from this lead flow page here that is not getting you any engagement, we need to evaluate that plan and see why it's not working. And so it's, again, just that audit of maybe this plan worked really great earlier this year, but now it's outdated, or now we're not getting any more engagement. So it's time to change things up. This is not a build it once and use it for the rest of your career. This is a fluid, what is happening?
Yeah, people change websites and links break. It can't always be a buyer's market. Like, do you definitely, yeah, to audit these. And again, being a demo account, it's a little tough because you can't see the stats here. The other thing to be mindful of, and I know I say this every time, but naming these well so that you can tell what they are. If it's just things that are sourcing tasks for follow-up, you're not going to have any engagement because there's no engagement to have. It's not sending emails to people. So it doesn't mean it's a bad plan if it's adding some sort of tag or a task to say, hey, it's been 3 days, check the stage on this lead. So again, you kind of have to use your brain. I wish we could say, hey, here's the magic thing, or hey, this is the right engagement rate. Another thing that's also handy, though, to kind of to your point, anything blue in Follow Up Boss, you can click on and drill down. You can see these numbers. So if you're looking at your action plan and you're like, oh, well, it fired on all these people, and you want to go to see some of those people and what happened with them, you can actually click on that. It does require a little more manual kind of digging in and looking, but it can be very useful. And obviously, these action plans are made up. We're not going to go deep on this here. They're made up of email templates, and each email template has reporting. So is
Mhm.
one of your templates just bad and people are unsubscribing and therefore the engagement is really low or it's not being seen through to completion? But clicking through, you can definitely dig a little more into kind of troubleshooting, where the weak link is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind and I'm going to kind of break the left to right rule,
That's
Lee.
okay. Do it.
But like you mentioned here, talking about on these action plans, having a series of tasks just to remind yourself to follow up really is not best practice anymore. So we definitely want to evaluate those, but that kind of gets us into leads are coming in. And now what are we doing with them? We have this stuff running behind the scenes to move the lead along in tagging, adding and removing collaborators, things, people that should be involved, and also what content's going out for brand new leads. But we need to call out, like looking at, you mentioned our stages, because now they're here. We know this stuff is running behind the scenes, but how do we have them categorized? And what are we doing with them in an approach that's not that task-based oriented type plan? It's not really great strategy anymore to just have those little check boxes because we've got so many other powerful things in Follow Up Boss that would take place of that, which are our smart lists. And if you have not been with us before, that is a series of saved search filters looking through what we're popping into the stages here. How are we identifying our people? Are we carrying them through in a proper way? And are we approaching them in a way that makes sense? We need to qualify these people. By default, they're going to be labeled as a lead. And so this is that top of funnel, who this person is in terms of the business, so that I can then approach them in a very real way. And when we're talking about that, we want to make sure that we look at these on a regular basis, just like we're auditing everything else, because do these definitions make the most sense to us still? Are we using certain lead sources that need these certain stages? How do we identify them? And then, of course, we'll hop into the approach, but we need to make sure, are these clearly defined? If I understand what they mean, if I'm running a team, does my team understand what they mean? And so when we're having these conversations as these leads are coming in, they need to know and be able to say, okay, who is Lee? He's a hot prospect. He's got this motivation. He's got that intentionality. And so we want to audit these and make sure, do we have things that are duplicitous? Great example here, see cold and nurture. What's the difference in that for you? Is it the same thing? Because if it is, maybe we need to consolidate. And I see a lot of accounts that do have some duplicitous type stages that we need to really dial down, because if they're not clearly defined and we're not sure, we don't know what to do with them moving forward. We don't even know how to categorize them, what that strategy is, what action plan is going to go out on behalf of that. And so we need a clear, concise list.
One thing to mention too, if anybody's looking for this and can't find it, this is only in the owner level account for a multitude of reasons. One cool pro tip though that I learned somewhat recently, um, you can view this in the app as even as an agent, and it actually gives you your individual account counts, I believe. But there is now a stages tab in the app where you can, in the mobile app, where you can at least see what they are and what order they're in. And I believe it does give the counts. I'm not going to pick up my phone right now. I believe it also gives the counts in each stage. And to me, that's one of the handiest things here. It's like, oh no, you've got 10,000 people in lead and 4 people in nurture. That's
Mm-hmm.
a pretty important audit thing. Like, hey, maybe we should move everybody older than 3 months into nurture in bulk and then
Yeah.
do something with that. The other cool thing is you can move the order around. I mean, these are in the right order, but by grabbing the tabs, again, only the owner can do this, but by grabbing the dots on the left-hand side, you can move the order. And this should feel like a sales funnel, right? It should go from lead to attempted to set to met to, showing homes. Like, but it's important to have them in the right order. Also, this is a little bit advanced, but if you're using some additional stages like recruiting stages or some other stages, it's wise to move them down to the bottom, because then like admin staff and whatnot can find them. And again, this is a demo, so this is not the recommended stages by any stretch. It's
So,
actually a
no.
combination of like 4 different sets of recommended stages. Um, but if there are things where you don't want agents to use them, don't make it easy. Don't make it the one right next to lead.
Yeah, that's a great call out there. And also, like, I always like to call out trash because we want to highlight and want to keep that one down to the bottom, because there should very few people should go in trash. Bad contact information, no good phone, no good email, incredibly offensive people that you wouldn't work with, even if they did come back around, because it does take them out of any search parameters, any lists, and you don't get re-notified if they come back around for some reason. And so, like to Lee's point, your point here, keep that one close to the bottom as well, because there's chances are there is a home for everybody else, and we want to make sure we're identifying them in that way. And to also call out, like Lee mentioned, like anything that's blue is clickable. And so you can see who is in this list. Again, this is an owner account. But if you're not in an owner account and you want to see the list inside a contact profile, this writing utensil dropdown will show you the list of your people. And so this is how you actually make those changes. And like you were talking about, all of these are at the very bottom. And so I'm seeing the ones that are of priority to identify first. And then our administrative people that are working with ISAs and recruits and things like that, they paid more attention to what's down here. But most of the time, if you're running a team, the agents don't even ever get that far because this is what they're focused on. And of course, green check mark, always have to save your changes.
Save, hit return, or click on the green check mark. It's funny, you know, in the name of audit and full disclosure, you know, I just saw on the stage list, somehow there's 2 past client stages. I didn't even know you could name 2 stages the same thing.
You know, I didn't either. That's an interesting, I wonder if there's like a character that's slightly
Right.
there. But like we said, we want to make sure when we're auditing this is, are they in the right order, and then are they defined? And
It makes sense, right?
maybe business has changed, or we do need a new workflow for recruiting. We're going to start adding on investment properties, and we need some stages for investment properties. You know, we've added on, you know, a lender. And so this piece is critically important to whoever is in your Follow Up Boss account and how are they working it. Because remember, this is that top of the funnel identifier of who this person is, so that we can then launch into what do we do with them.
And not to get too ahead of ourselves, but things like some of the reporting features and the deals reporting, it's more tied to deal stages. But you know, there are things that are like time and stage. So how long has this person, if they've been in hot for a year, then they ain't hot. So again, using these things to drill down and kind of figure out what makes the most sense. I do want to mention real quick too, and I'll try to find a direct link to it, but we do have a prior office hour session that should be in the playlist I shared in the chat on defining these stages. Because again, it's super important. And look, you can do it in the Google Doc, like type the stage, type what you think it is. Like lead is new. Everybody should get out of lead. Attempted contact means keep trying over and over again. But, you know, after 30 days, 45 days, whatever you figure, you can make, if your stages are clean, you can make an automation or an action plan that says, if they've been in this stage for 30 days, move them to nurture. So again, a lot you can do here, but having the right fundamentals, like Paige said early on, drive everything else and help keep you from having any weird crossed wires.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a good call out too. Another thing to be auditing is like, do we have everybody in lead stage still? Are we using our stages at all? Because if you have a database of hundreds or thousands of people and they're all in lead stage, nothing else is going to functionally work. You will be scrolling through all of your data and being like, I wonder what Lee's up to today. And then you find out he's bought with somebody else because we've lost him. And so are we auditing, like, are we actually using our stages? This is one of those quarterly evaluations that I really feel strongly about. Maybe we don't check lead flow once a quarter, but check and see how many people are in, especially you account owners, are in each one of these like new stages that we don't have them identified, because we need to be able to have that particular strategy for them. And if they're all in lead, nothing else that we've set up is going to be working. And that's a good call out to be like, start to sift through who's leaving them in lead stage. Why are they still in lead stage? The goal is to get it out of lead stage as quickly as humanly possible, as soon as we have a conversation and we know who they are.
And with that said, that's a perfect segue. And we're going to, again, circumvent the left to right thing. This is just the way I do it. And I think the way Paige does it too. Let's go ahead and hit on people and look at smart lists, because the smart lists are typically often tied to stages.
Yes.
And something I want to mention real quick, just before I forget it, and then I'll let you run with smart lists. You've got, if you're an owner or an admin, you probably have the drop down right there where it says everyone. One of the great things you can do in this, to what Paige, what you said just reminded me of this page, if you're like, what agents are doing this, what agents are moving these, what agents are clearing out their smart list, If you go to any of your smart lists, you can use that drop down to navigate to a specific agent or a specific team and see who is leaving people in lead or who is just putting people in nurture and they're just sitting there. How many people that are hot are in a pond? Like this drop down is really handy. It's great for one-on-ones. If you're meeting with an agent, you want to, how many people do you have in your hot or appointment met or appointment set smart list? As an admin, it's easy. Now you're not impersonating them and doing this. You're just seeing their leads. But a really handy way to just kind of be able to see like who's keeping up with this and who's not. You've got the counts up there, but the counts are typically global. So as you drop this filter down, now you're able to see the counts for each agent, group of agents, or team.
Yeah, that's a really great call out here. And what we're talking about, like you said, these are so closely tied to stages and so closely tied to our configuration of settings. So because they're looking for, we like to keep it very simple. When we're talking about what do we do with our leads, it's am I logging communication? And am I changing my stage? If that's the case, then my people tab becomes my proactive outreach. It is for who this person is and how often I should be following up with them. And so we talk about the definitions of smart lists on a lot of these office hours because it's so critically tied into everything that we're looking at. And so if we've cleaned up our stages, maybe we've consolidated a few, maybe we've gotten rid of a few, we then want to look at our smart lists as well and make sure that they are filtering. You can pop these open here and see what they're filtering for. What they're filtering for is what stage are they in and when did we last communicate and how often do we want to communicate? New leads, we're going to be on top of them a whole lot more frequently as opposed to somebody that we are going to be identifying as cold or nurture or whatever the naming convention you want to give it. So they're conceptually, they're all the same, but they do stagger out based on how you've identified who they are. So Follow Up Boss is automatically cycling these people in here for you, showing you who to call and when. And as soon as you call them, they fall off the list and reappear again in that proper time frame. So talking back to those action plans that we said are no longer best practices just to have like call, text, follow up type tasks, this takes the place of that. Couple of good perks for this. Number one, you actually have to action the item to make them fall off this list. You actually have to call them, text them, or email them. A task you can check off and you may or may not have actually done it. And there's not really a great way of telling if you can't, if you have done it. So if you're a team leader and admin and you're auditing account, sure, maybe I don't have any tasks checked off, but you're going to have to go through all my completed ones and go one by one to each one of those leads to see if I actually did it. And this is your, like he said, like Lee said, with the popping down to checking on individual agents, if there's nothing on this list, I know that they've actioned those items. We've got those particular pieces. So not only auditing, like, are these lists, going down in our bay and workable numbers, but do they make the most sense for us? We've been working on twice a week for our hot prospects for about 6 months now. Is that getting us any results? Should we increase that frequency? Should we decrease it? It may change and it may vary depending on those markets. And you start to learn how people are responding to your approach. And so we want to look at, do these make sense? And does this frequency still make sense? Are they clearly defined? And again, this is that big foundational piece of an account audit, because if we don't know who to call, when to call, and why to have those conversations and what type of conversations we're having, our database becomes very messy. It's very muddy, and you're going to be scrolling for a really long time, probably calling the wrong people at the wrong time, missing the right people at the right time. And that's usually when we have like calls with teams that are like, we just realized that we missed out on 6 deals in the last 5 months because this was not taken care of. You don't want to be at the end of the year short on your volume goal and then only to realize it's because we're not filtering properly. Anything else you want to cover on that? I know this is like kind of really defining them, but as far as the audit goes.
Yeah, I don't think so. Part of me feels like, yeah, yes, but I think that's key. And I think, the only other thing I'll mention, and again, tying it back to the teams page a little bit, if someone's smart lists are really full, like we work with a lot of people, if their smart lists are really full, let's pause somebody on leads. Hey, you got 30 people in your hot smart list that you haven't yet gotten to. We're going to pause you on leads and give you a chance to get caught up. Again, a data driven decision is not emotional. And, frankly, if you're running a team or a brokerage, that's also a great way to make it clear or remind agents that you can see what's going on in here and that you are paying attention. And people feel a lot more accountable to, oh, they can see if I have 30 people in my hot smart list and I need to be tackling through that. But yeah, so on this page, you can pause someone globally. And again, now it's not a punishment. Now it is a, hey, you've got a lot of people to call today. Once you get through all those people, we'll be happy to put you back on active new leads.
Yeah, absolutely. So that gives you that, that team lead visibility of what's happening with your leads and what's happening with your account. And then making some, like you said, data-driven decisions on how we're going to move forward with that. If we're not looking at this regularly and evaluating it, again, our numbers become unworkable. Our agents aren't converting properly. And then you've got a bigger mess on your hands than you probably needed to, because we can set the system up to carry those things along and to be able to monitor them. If we see that if we've got 30 leads in a smart list, that's a conversation to have. Are we overwhelmed with too many leads?
Right. Is it training? Is it too many? Do they not know what to say? Is it actually just too many leads? Did they go on vacation and didn't tell you? And
Yeah.
again, tied back to the login. If they haven't logged in 7 days and their smart list is full, that's stuff you want to know as a business owner that you can see right here instead of like texting someone or asking them what's going on. Again,
Yeah.
proactive, that leading indicator more than a lagging, like, oh, I didn't know they haven't logged in 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah. When we're looking at smart lists that are overloaded, and you say, like you said, is it educational? Is it hesitation? Instead of spending time on like the quantity of what we're doing inside Follow Up Boss, because we're already doing that and we're living and breathing in here, we can now focus on the quality. So if we identify that it's educational, well, then we can solve for that. If there's hesitation, let's have a conversation, because I want to be able to sit down in my one-on-ones with you and focus on the quality of your conversions, how you're handling your leads and following that strategy. I've already provided the strategy for you. We're optimizing your decision making here and knowing, just come in here, make your calls, have those conversations so that we can further evaluate what's really working well for us.
Totally. Cool. Well, let's cruise through. Those are big things. I know we spent a lot of time on those, but those are also really important things. So I think we're going to push through a couple other things and not go quite as deep. Let's go ahead and go sort of back to left to right page. Maybe let's hit automations. And again, this can be a little bit difficult to audit. Like you may have a lot, you've added them over time. They may do big things.
Mhm.
But in there, honestly, it is a bit hard to audit. The thing I think I'm going to say at a high level on an audit, and I know I say this literally 7 times every office hours, name them well so they help you. Here's what this does. When you change a stage, it fires this action plan or it changes the stage. It makes it a lot easier to audit. Or if you are seeing crossed wires, hey, what automation is making this stage change or making this action plan go out, then it's a lot easier to come right back here and go, oh, shoot, it's this one. I need to add a condition that says only if they haven't been contacted in the last 7 days or whatever. And also being sure the right ones are on, making sure one didn't get turned off or something crazy didn't happen. The other thing I always do when I audit these, that times run is unbelievably handy. Has it run 7,000 times or has it run 4? I'm embarrassed to admit this, but when I'm doing this sometimes or setting up a new one, sometimes I'll like put it on my calendar or put it in my notes with the number it had run as of Monday.
Mhm.
So I can be like, oh, now it's Thursday. How many times has it run since? Because this is an aggregate number.
Yeah, that's a great call out here. And I mean, like you said, keeping this at a high level to audit this, everything that you just said right there, Lee, but to also look and see, this is what's happening. So we've talked about lead flow, what happens when new leads come in. This is what happens to leads that already exist in Follow Up Boss. There's something that has happened via Follow Up Boss or through an integration that is triggering for an existing lead. And so these are what's happening with them. And if we have the great naming conventions, like you mentioned, we know, okay, when we change that deal stage, this is supposed to happen. Is that still something we need to happen or we want to happen? If you've modified the action plan or the email, then, great, but do we need to add extra conditions? And so just keeping this on a very high level, we do webinars on automations all the time. So I don't want to get too granular into them. But again, just look and see, does this still need to happen to our existing database?
And then ponds, not so much to audit, but do you have too many? Can some be consolidated? Did you forget to add the new agent to the new leads pond, or are people in the right prospecting pond? Who is the pond lead? Because the emails and automated things or batch emails go out from the pond lead. Maybe if the pond lead hasn't logged in 3 weeks, then you're going to want to know that.
Yeah, exactly. Not a whole lot to call out here, but just looking at the team members, do your agents have visibility to the leads you want them to see? That's the granular piece here. So I'm going to hop over to email, and I'm going to kind of group these two together, email and text templates. We talked about evaluating your content on your action plans and getting on that granular level as well of how many times it's gone out, but then are they replying with this? And so are they engaging with it? If you've sent this out 1,000 times and not a single person has clicked through your call to action, chances are that template needs to become not a template for you anymore. And so looking at each one of those and the results you've received from them, review the language, review those particular things. And again, the same with text templates. Now, these are going to be manual one-to-one pushes for cell phone carrier compliance. Besides that initial auto text, you can have one initial text message go out automatically from those brand new leads. And then everything else is a manual one-to-one push. I like to always clarify that because we don't do mass texting. We don't do drip texting, but there is a space for text templates that we're utilizing, especially in the world of cell phone carrier laws and compliances now, because we score them based on how well they're performing. And we can tell if they're opting out and seeing what you're getting engagement with. That is going to protect the integrity of your cell phone number inside Follow Up Boss that you should be using, and making sure that we're not getting that spam likely flagged and we're not getting those non-delivery things. If it's not delivering, you're not converting. If they're not replying, you're not converting. So review your content and review the results. Anything on that you want to add?
Nope, that's great. I love that. And I think using text templates helps you get that scoring, and it helps you control your messaging. So rather than just typing out a new text to everybody every time, again, name them well, but having a buyer nurture number 2, follow up to phone calls, send my V card, all those things, and then you're going to get good scoring on those. So
I'm going to kind of skip over the import piece.
yeah,
If you've got leads that need to come in and you've got a full file of them,
import them.
Let's import them. But as far as reviewing like what's been imported, and you want to review what's been imported right after you import it and make sure it's done properly. You don't want to wait.
Right. Yeah, don't check that later. Custom fields we can hit real quick, just largely the order of them. And I think in this account, yeah, we do have kind of those categories, which I think is a great idea if you have a lot of custom fields. Number 1, put them in the right order, especially if they're things like links to a fellow or a real scout. Like you want those at the top. Things that agents are going to access and want to be able to see. But just grouping them into, you see, we have the primary info, demographic info, like you can just add those. They're not actually custom fields, they're just placeholders, but they keep them nice and organized.
Yeah, that's a really great call out too. So again, this is another one of those account owner audit pieces. The custom fields are only visible in the account owner. So if you're not an owner and that needs to be evaluated, just sit down with your team lead. Now, additionally, this calling piece we want to look at, if you're a pro or platform account, you automatically get a direct business line for each one of your agents. But if you're on like a grow plan that's on an individual case-by-case basis, we want to make sure that everybody has a phone number. I highly recommend, regardless of what plan you're on, you're using the Follow Up Boss dialer. You're calling and texting through FUB so that all of this other stuff is updating, logging, tracking, real time for you. Huge benefit to that. I won't go on my full spiel, I promise, Lee. But we want to make sure, let's turn on that phone number. So, oh, we added a new agent and we forgot to get them a phone number assigned. Just something they can't call and text because we don't have a number for them yet. We've already touched on stages, and so I'll touch quickly on phone numbers here. This is your view of being able to see what phone numbers are tied to each one of your agents. Is it the proper area code? Did we add an agent and forget to swap it out? Maybe, I live in Nashville, but I'm originally from Seattle, and so it pulled in a Seattle area code based on my cell phone number. What we want to call locally from where we're at now. Double check that, but specifically, let's look at your business registration.
Yeah, please.
This is, again, from the owner account level, and this is going to take care of, I get this question a lot, company-wide. So you only have to do this once. Each agent on your team does not. This is your EIN information and your website information. In order to text from Follow Up Boss now, it is a law and in compliance that this has to be registered with our provider as a business. And it has to be reviewed by carriers and approved by carriers before you're allowed to text message moving forward. So if you're a new account or if you haven't done this yet, you need to do this today. If you are text messaging and you're having failures, which we're seeing a lot of tickets, ties back to your business registration.
No, you
So,
literally now, as of December 1st, cannot send a text or make a call through the system if this is not done. One analogy I want to throw out, and this is pure speculation, I've kind of made this up, so I should be clear about saying that. It feels like more and more as things are tied to your EIN, it really is almost like a credit score for communications.
I love that.
If you're hitting a bunch of cold people with a bunch of salesy texts, like it's diminishing your reputation overall for the entire account. And it does affect everyone else in the account. So like we have some big brokerages where one person will go cold text a bunch of people and it will affect the entire brokerage's account. But it feels to me more and more, I start to visualize it as the credit score and the idea if you're spamming a bunch of people, your score overall is going down. If you're sending messages that people are replying to and engaging with, your score is going up or at least staying stable. But that feels like where everybody's kind of headed with this now. It's like an overall company reputation as far as outbound email calls and texts.
I really love that analogy, and I'm going to steal it from you now. Thanks, Lee.
Perfect.
But yes, this is critically important for the performance of your account. Double check. Once it's approved, you're good. But we want to make sure that that has been submitted, that it is approved so that you can call and text message through here because laws are changing, times are changing, and this is protecting the integrity of those phone numbers and keeping you in compliance with new laws. So again, this is one of those things, like you just said, Lee, this is effective December 1st. We've known it's coming. We've been speaking to it a lot on our support and success team, but it is here now. And that is an evolution of something that's happened that was different from this year as opposed to later this year. So maybe it wasn't important to you in February, but you're looking at it now. This is things that have changed. So making sure your account is in alignment with what is changing in the world and in your business. Now, when we're talking about our tags piece here, again, this is another owner account one. There's a wide variety of opinions on it. And Lee, you may be able to share yours. Some really like a lot of tags. Some people want to keep it very consolidated. We want to make sure, of course, we don't have 60 tags with the same idea that we're using because we can create so many. But do we filter by zip codes or cities? That comes auto tagged with a lot of our lead sources. And if that's not on, you're not getting those tags and now your lead flow is not working. Right. So we're talking about really tying all of this in to getting our leads in and knowing what to do with them.
Yeah, I think my general MO in Follow Up Boss is more minimalist, but I think tags are fine to have a lot of. Again, as long as they're useful and they make sense. Auto tagging, pulling in zip codes and cities to be able to reverse prospect or do things like that are awesome. So I don't stress if somebody has a lot of tags if they're useful, but I totally agree if they're bad underscore number and bad hyphen number and bad space number and all kinds of weird things. One last thing before we move on from this too. These are not technically case sensitive. So you can make them with uppercase and then whatnot, but there's not a duplicate if they're all lowercase, like it's technically the same tag. Therefore, they wouldn't show up here that way. But you can hit the edit button and edit the tag without removing it. So if you really want it to be uppercase or all lowercase or whatnot, that can be done. But I felt like it was briefly worth mentioning.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're kind of cruising through some of these, but again, some of them are just quick glances. It's
Yeah.
not like we're going to spend hours auditing our entire account. So similar to like the integrations page, do we know what technology that we're using? Is it still connected? Same with when we hop over to our API. Like this kind of ties into, we'll pop back to the company one to evaluate, but these pieces of what we're bringing in, is it still there? Did an API key break on an integration? Is it still coming in? Because we don't want to be 6 months down the line and all of a sudden all of our leads from, Sierra have not come in because the API key broke and we didn't pay attention to it. Chances are you'll probably figure that one out sooner rather than later, but just another call out to the why.
Yep. Absolutely.
This is probably a view like for your company that you want to evaluate, like with this information is what ties to your marketing emails. So by law, you've got to have that information in the bottom area. So any of your action plan emails, this is the information that it's pulling from. And so did your address change? Have we changed locations? Are our office hours different? And so just, again, this one's a very quick glance to make sure that everything is still accurate. If we want to set like production goals for other reporting, maybe that changes for next year. Just this one's probably a once a year review, unless you've moved recently or something like that.
One thing I will add though, and because I see a lot of people when I go through and do this that don't have an address. An address is required for canned spam. So be certain that you have an address in here.
Mm,
It is legally required. You can technically not have one, but then your address is not affixed to your unsubscribe link when you send multiple or batch emails. So it is important. The other thing to mention real fast, the time zone is surprisingly important. Like I go through people's accounts all the time and I'm like, these guys are in Houston. Why are they in Eastern time?
yes,
This
yes.
affects your appointment reminder texts. It affects action plan texts because they won't go out in the middle of the night, but they'll go out at, is it 9? I think it's not 8 or 9 a.m.
Yeah, in your time zone.
But that's in your time zone. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, it's in Eastern and we're in Pacific, but it does matter. And the office hour settings also control your team inboxes potentially ringing out to people.
Mhm.
So again, to your point, Paige, not something you necessarily need to audit all the time, but just make sure it's right, and then it's not going to change.
Sorry, my headphones picked up like way over there and it turned my audio off for a second. But yeah, you're exactly right. That time zone's important. It also, like by default, when you're setting your appointments, you might be setting stuff in the wrong time zone and showing up at the wrong times, and that's not professional.
Yep.
So just again, these little details make such a big difference for that big foundation. And so like just popping over to like the exact same thing, like calling into appointments. We can have different types of appointments and like do for those particular outcomes, like for our reporting metrics and for evaluating again what's working for us. Where are we getting stuck at in the phase of a contract? We're getting stuck after the listing appointment, we're not securing them. Well, maybe there's conversation, we need to practice our listing presentation more. And so just looking to make sure that our categories are identified and defined the exact same way that we need to. Did we add on for recruiting or a different type of our business where we need more appointment types or outcomes, or did we drop part of our business that we're no longer doing? And so there is some reports that are tied into this and are tied to that you can look at. So again, are they clearly defined? Do we have what we need? Let's get them added.
Absolutely. And last but not least, even though there's a lot more we could go through, but we'll wrap with this. Definitely also not least, and yes, mine is not connected, but it's not real, and we don't send emails through here. Um, Email domain authentication. And again, this is not just a Follow Up Boss thing. This is actually Follow Up Boss helping you have your domain that you're emailing from registered so that you're getting a higher deliverability on your emails than someone who's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And this gets kind of confusing and it's a complicated piece here. So if it feels confusing to you and you're not quite sure where your domain is registered, our support team can certainly help you with that.
Well, let's wrap like we always wrap by showing the question mark and reminding people all the great things they can do in the question mark.
We've done this before, Lee, right? But we want to make sure like we get this authenticated so that we don't have all of our emails, like those templates and those things that we're evaluating performance. We don't want those going to spam folders. So this is that extra layer of trying to help you get the deliverability that you need. So in this question mark lower down here, if we need to grab this and we're not quite sure how to install it, we don't have a developer, we've got our support team, you can click this and our support team is right here. It has grown exponentially. So I don't even know how many support team members we have anymore, but they're
Not the
all
6 people that are up there.
it's not 6 people anymore.
Heck, Steve's still there, and Ashley.
Right, right. And so these are just, it's not an AI focused support team. And we like to emphasize that. Like you may get like some emails that say, hey, volume is higher, things like that, but it's a real person that's troubleshooting with you and triaging those pieces. So you can attach images or even record videos straight from Follow Up Boss. We really like the videos, by the way. It's very helpful because we can see exactly what you're doing and how to help you fix it. And so they're 7 days a week, not quite 24/7 yet. And we have hopes maybe one day, but 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in your time zone. And this is the number where you can call them directly and just get them on the phone. Or like I said, you can submit a ticket with a video and they're here to help you troubleshoot and to help you understand even more the technical side of these things.
Absolutely. And the last thing I definitely want to cover in the question mark, and again, I know I do this every time, but it's so useful. This unified search is really powerful at the top. You can type anything into that. And now this pulls from the YouTube channel, help desk articles, like all
Find
things.
office hours with you.
Office hours. There's short and there's short. Sometimes there's short, like quick tip videos. Sometimes there's a longer in-depth, hey, I need to really dig into how to do this thing or that thing. But whether you like to read or watch a short video or see a podcast about it, this unified search, I just can't say enough good things. I mean, I personally use it and I certainly know how to find all the things, but like I still use this because it's so great. You can just come in here and type in anything and find relevant resources that are going to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I use this every day too. Anytime I get an email in my inbox from one of my clients and we're talking best practices, I pull our help center, I pull up our documents and we send those to you. You can do this yourself, of course, but if you need direction with that, this is exactly where I pull it from too. And one thing additionally to call out, like we have this for you where you can be that self-starter. We have support that can answer the questions, but also this Facebook community. If you are not in this yet, you probably are because you saw this advertisement from Lee, but if you're not, this is a large community of Follow Up Boss users only that share ideas that can help troubleshoot, give guidance. I mean, it is such a wonderful group of individuals that's incredibly supportive. You can search through that community and see if your question's already been asked before and find those threads, or additionally submit those questions. We've got us as CSMs are in there to help moderate and answer questions. And then some of our, top producing long-term customers like yourself also help moderate and answer those questions. So you've got the ability to get the answers that you need. You have the resources and you've got the support from all of our entire community there too.
Love that. Great. Yeah, so glad you added that. So, well, thank you guys. I know we ran long and I know it's a lot to digest and cover. For everyone registered, we always email out the recording to everyone. Who I am going to drop one last link. But these always end up on the Follow Up Boss YouTube channel, which if you're not subscribed to, you should be. I don't know why I'm not fast enough to find it. Well, I'll do you one better. I'll drop this in again. I already dropped the office hours playlist in. I'll drop that link in one more time. And then that's obviously on the Follow Up Boss YouTube channel. You can subscribe, turn on alerts, but tons of content there from the Team OS things to how-to videos to great interviews and all the above. But Paige, thank you. Is a lot to tackle. I appreciate you doing it and working through it all.
Yeah, anytime. Again, I mean, this is the time of year. January 1st comes around. Don't start 2025 with your account in a disarray. Such a critical topic. I know we did cover a lot. We docked into a lot of big concepts. So I appreciate your time and always going through it. What a great way to end office hours for this year. And I'm excited to see what we cover next year.
You bet. Thanks so much. You guys take care. Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.